together and decide we want to have free energy for all. But it really changes the makeup of the society.
Because?
Well, if there's no need for energy, it can't be an economy based on getting money and buying things and selling things. Because if you don't need energy, there's a different type of organization altogether. Part of my heritage is Native American, and I think of my ancestors. They didn't need to mow down some other culture and, whoever is king of the mountain and takes over turf. They instead had all sorts of interesting folklore and art and lived for centuries and centuries and centuries, within their means. And I think that would be a wonderful way to head to.
Are you involved in any of the free energy projects or trying to promote or advocate any particular ones? Or
I don't know which popular stuff. If it's popular, then it's infiltrated, is what I assume. Mm-hmm. Anything popularized, anything group oriented gets undermined. So things you do individually and quietly
have a chance
of
seeing the light of day.
Right.
And what is your challenge right now, given the massive amounts of information you've compiled and analysis that you've done? What is your greatest challenge today?
Well, I would like to get the word out to folks, and I have a book coming out, hopefully, that it's finished, and I hope it does get out there, and it just has the information. It just has the physical evidence in it. And if you look at it in terms of not a horror scene, but look at this technology, it's pretty amazing. Think of all the things you could do with it.
I don't think the average person can think of what you can do with it, because the direct energy weapon that you're describing, or this type of directed energy, was used for something destructive. So how do we imagine what it could be used for? Translate to us from a science point of view how we can start to imagine that being used for good.
Coral Castle.
Oh, I want to do an interview there. That is the most interesting place. Have you been?
I want to go. It's the same type of thing. Like the pyramids.
Yeah.
That's the same type of energy.
That is a definite anomaly. I want to actually do television there. I've already called them and they said yes.
I'm there. You know the song that Billy Idol made famous, Sweet 16?
Yeah.
That was written about Ed Leedskalnin.
Really?
In Coral Castle.
Oh, wow.
Somebody built a candy castle. He means Coral Castle. And somebody, made coral, candy brain and filled it in. Well, it's made out of coral brain.
Very, very interesting.
And it was his video was filmed there too. I understand, on location. But that is the same technology. He lifted 30,000 pound rocks.
Right, and he did it at night when no one was looking and there was no crew or anything.
But the stones he lifted, the largest stones he lifted, were more than twice the size of the largest stones at the Great Pyramid.
Wow.
And he was 100 pounds?
Yeah, he was a very, very frail guy, actually.
And he probably kept it a secret for the same reasons that Tesla did. But, we don't need to worry about, somebody using it for evil, because they already are. So let's use it for good. You can build stuff, and, he powered his home with his free energy.
Fascinating.
Rotating magnets.
One other question I want to ask you, because we're taking in a lot at one time. A lot of people were told that the airplane fuel is what brought down the buildings. Can you explain how that's not so? Or why that's not so, if it's not so?
How many gallons and gallons of airplane fuel, and how many times was it reused and used over again? If it burns this, how can it burn that at the same time? That's one issue.
Wait, I don't understand what you said. Say that again.
They assume that airplane fuel is limitless, like there's a zillion gallons of it. If it can burn up one floor, how can it burn up the whole building? as soon as you have something go into the air and burn, instantly it's gone. It might ignite a fire on the 73rd floor, a paper fire, but it's burned itself up. If that were even the case. Also, if you're talking about hot fires, you're talking about melting. The buildings didn't melt; they turned to powder. So airplane fuel and fires do not cause things to turn into powder in mid-flight. These pieces of steel were flying through the air and dissolved into powder as they were flying through the air in mid-flight.
How do we know that?
You look at the images. If you go to my website, drjudywood.com.
Okay, I'm there.
And /WTC. At the top of that page, there's some videos of these wheat checks flying through the air.
I see it.
And right below that is the intersection where the guys come out of their hiding place afterwards, and you can tell from their gestures, the hands and the hips and so forth. There's like, my gosh, there's blue sky there. Where's the building? That intersection was where that stuff was headed. This is paper.
I'm taking it in as we're doing this interview, and it's hard for me too.
Right, because the other has been so ingrained there so long. But if you look at the Toasted Cars page, there's on that one page, that's my Cliff Notes page. You got some of everything, or most of the categories, and just a little sampling of each. There's of course a long series. You can get into more, but if you go to drjudywood.com /WTC, and at the top is a long list of different categories of evidence, and then you can click on those and go see samples of each of those down the page.
Okay.
The Twin Towers were destroyed faster than physics can explain by a free fall collapse. They underwent mid-air pulverization, turned to dust before they hit the ground. The protective bathtub was not significantly damaged by the destruction of the towers, yet they were worried about the earth-moving equipment hurting the bathtub. But they weren't worried about a 110-story building falling on it, hurting it. The rail lines and tunnels where the path trains only had light damage. And in February, they pulled out some of the path trains, and they're completely intact. There were a couple that were smushed, but there's some that I think more of them were not smushed. The underground mall survived in most areas, and as witnessed by Roadrunner. He survived at the Warner Brothers store. Yeah, is that good? And let's see, I forget what his name is, Foghorn Leghorn and Bugs Bunny. Those life-size characters from the store survived, and they're in some museum now. And the seismic impacts were less. The Twin Towers had 30 times, that's 30 times, the potential energy of the King Dome. It would make 30 times as much boom. And yet the seismic signal that they produced was equal or less than the King Dome. So that's another issue. Okay, they were destroyed from the top down, not the bottom up. In whisper quiet destruction. The upper 80% or 90% of the buildings were turned to dust. Only one file cabinet survived. That was from the Ben & Jerry's ice cream store. You have to kind of stretch things to realize it's a file cabinet. Looks like a football, kind of wadded up, crumpled up, but it still had colored file folders. So how is it, crumpled up without burning? I mean, the paper. They also had some money in it, they found. No toilets. We covered that one. Windows of the nearby buildings with the round holes in them and circular-shaped holes. And that is a sign of longitudinal waves, longitudinal energy waves.
What is that?
Instead of like a ripple type of wave, one that packs a punch, like the long direction of a slinky rather than the up and down direction. Think of a rubber band when you snap it. That's a longitudinal wave. And a jump rope is the lateral kind.